Drop the egoic thinking. By practicing presence. The word presence is used by Eckhart Tolle in his book The Power of Now, where he also talks about how we are addicted to thinking. Because thinking is what forms ego. It is a fake persona that we get identified with. A story of our mind. And as long as we do our thinking from the filter of this egoic story, we will never think accurately. And if you notice, you will realize that egoic thinking thrives on problems. We can dwell on a negative event all day. But God forbid if something good happens. We give it nothing more than a few minutes of thinking. Most of us put aside a good event in a few minutes. An event that we should celebrate and think about all day. But we don't. You see, negative thought is food for the ego. It loves problems. So, something that loves problems cannot fix them. Because it is like a biased judge. Who will never do a fair trial because of his biasness. The ego loves problems, so it will only create more of it. This is when overthinking comes into play. Since mostly negative thought is food for ego. It wants to keep eating. Since there is an endless supply so long as you, the host, cooperates. This is when presence can end the cycle of misery. Presence is simply that awareness that is observing the ego, the mind, the body. It may be regarded as your soul. It is the real you. Your consciousness. The acceptor or rejecter of your thoughts. And in the light of your consciousness, ego cannot exist. Just like darkness cannot survive in the light. Unless you shed the light of your consciousness on this unconscious vicious cycle, you won't ever be able to think accurate. As Carl Jung said. Until you make the unconscious conscious. It will direct your life and you will call it fate. Since masses do their thinking on autopilot under the supervision of ego and not their presence. They are led to unfavorable circumstances and call it fate or the will of God. Not knowing that it is our own thoughts that we dwell on all day long that are directing our life. Overthinking cannot survive the moment you become aware of it. Don't fight the thoughts, don't condemn them. Just observe. The moment you identify with them is the moment you lose presence. So don't fall into that trap. To be devoid of egoic thinking is the beginning of thinking accurately. Remember. Our egoic mind doesn't know the full picture in any given situation. It is basing its prediction from your past and the minuscule degree of present that it perceives from the lens of its story. So, how can it think accurately? It can't. Thinking accurate means to think in terms of what is best for you. It is to realize that whatever you dwell on manifests in your reality. It is to realize that chronic negative thinking causes disease and suffering in life. And is responsible for all dysfunctions. When we know how reality works, we realize that how powerful is our attention and our thinking. So, we become careful on what we dwell upon mentally. We start investing our thinking. Rather than waste it on useless mental debates about how horrible your boss is and how you are roasting him in your mind all day long. Accurate thinking is completely biased. Biased towards the reality that you want to manifest. For example, you start a business and it fails. Ego will say that it is because you are not competent enough or it is the government's fault, etc. While if you bring awareness into this situation, you realize exactly what went wrong and how to avoid it in the next attempt. Because you will simply not consider this anybody's fault. Because you are biased towards your success. You will learn and move forward and succeed. Ego focuses on facts of life. While accurate thinking knows that we create our own reality, so facts don't matter. Circumstances can change in an instant. Presence frees you from the cycle of negative thinking and creates space for what you want. And then when you focus on what you want, the accurate thoughts begin to flow towards you. Begin now and start to become more and more present in your everyday life. Make it a habit to observe your mind. Especially when a triggering situation arises. That is the most important time to be present. Because you will see how ego plays the game. And it will become apparent to you how negatively biased it is. It makes a situation 100 times worse than it actually is, as it loves problems. So, your presence in such moments will remove the veil of egoic thinking. The more you become aware of it, the more power it loses. And the more accurate thinker you become. And the calmer the mind becomes. And the more the life becomes peaceful. And most of all, you become free from overthinking. Begin now, this very moment, and ask yourself. Are you aware, right now,